Our name is Ghosts. Want you dead. In uncertain times, when mysterious forces seem to permeate the very air, when peril lurks in every shadowy corner, and the beating of spectral wings wakes you from a tortured slumber. Who you gonna call? Hello, I'm Matthew.
And I'm Rebecca. I would call you. I would be like, Manny, his fucking ghosts. That's what I would do.
Fair enough. I probably wouldn't do anything.
So, hi, ghost.
Yeah. We're going to take a break and record a bit to go in the bonus episode. Patron Amy pointed out that we'd previously mentioned if people paid us, we would discuss our tragic backstory. Well, we're going to do that, but I'm going to cut it and put it in the bonus episode. So if you want the gossip about Rebecca and I, you'll have to join the Patreon. This is also your last chance to do so and receive special bonus gifts, which I will mail out to you in the coming days if you join by May 1st. Anyway, now we'll cut and do that. I meant to, but failed to look up another historic fire, but now I kind of want to. Oh, well, I think this week in 1967, there was the Great Chicago Blizzard. I fell down on the job and did not dig up a history tidbit for this week.
Well, that's okay.
I suppose we ought to get on with it and talk about the program.
Well, it was exciting this week.
This was an exciting week.
I'm
Yes.
I'm into this arc. Austin, we hope that this.
He should be excited that
Yeah.
something is finally happening. Episode 156, Victoria Winters reminds us that a storm is a brewing, but they're more worried about the bird lady at present. We see Liz collapse on the stairs again, and Roger comes down and discovers her crumpled at the bottom of the stairs. He calls out in a panic for Mrs. Johnson and Vicky to come quick, opening credits. Roger bellows out, "Vicky!" again and again, and Vicky comes down, and Liz comes too, confused. Roger yells for Vicky to call a doctor, but Liz refuses, saying that would embarrass her.
Yeah, he's freaking out and trying to make her lie down, and she wants to go over the menus with Mrs. Johnson for tomorrow and can't be bothered to spend her afternoon lying down. And
Vicky asks her what might have happened, and Liz can't recall. Roger tries to force brandy on her, but Liz instead goes over a list of all the things she needs to accomplish this afternoon, like getting Mrs. Johnson the menus for tomorrow, and she also has a meeting with someone for work. Roger informs her that it is in fact after 10 o'clock at night, and all those things are already done. Seems Mrs. Stoddard has a touch of the bird magic amnesia, which I thought about calling the bird flu, but didn't.
that's pretty good.
She can't recall anything beyond writing some letters after lunch, so she tries to retrace her steps to see if that might help her remember what she'd been doing, but
She
she starts to collapse again on the stairs.
she starts to weaken and they catch her and she says, "Help me, get me to my room." And it's not looking good for Liz in this witch battle, like, she is falling ill. They take her upstairs. Over at the Blue Whale, Joe is getting a beer. "Oh, hi, Joe. We've missed you." I thought you would be pleased to see Joe.
I am always pleased to see Joe,
It's stormy outside
although
and
he's about to get some competition for my affections.
oh, yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
Carry on.
It's stormy outside, and there's some film noir saxophoning playing, and Carolyn comes in from the storm. And Joe sees her and asks if she's out looking for her boyfriend, and then takes it back and apologizes for being pointed and is basically like, "I'm still mad because you're a bitch, but we should at least be cordial." And she asks for his
Also, I have a new
yeah.
girlfriend now, so shouldn't be so butthurt about your antics if I'm happy with a nice
Yeah,
girl
that
now.
bothered me. I was like, "Joe, come on, gotta get over it." Uh, I hope he's not just using Maggie. I love Maggie. Anyway, she asks for his forgiveness, but he won't give it, and she presses. And Joe's like, "Well, maybe we should steer clear of each other." She wants to be friends and is all, "But you like me, Joe." And looking all dreamy, he was like, "I never said I liked you. I said I loved you." And I was like, "Okay, Joe, you tell it." Carolyn is begging to be friends and wants them to go sit and hang out, and he calls her out, and he's like, "Why? So you can make Burke jealous when he gets here? No, thanks." And I will say this for Joe, I can understand being, like, just mad at being put through the bullshit. Like, maybe he doesn't care so much about Burke as, like, "You're not gonna use me to then make Burke jealous and play your fucked up manipulative Carolyn games." But I don't know. Maybe he's just still hung up. What do you think?
I mean, I already said that I thought it was shitty that he's still so upset about all this when he has moved on.
That's true.
Mm, That's okay, I still love him. Anyway, the awkward fight is broken up by Carolyn receiving a phone call at the bar, and both she and Joe think that it's Burke. But instead, it's Roger calling to tell her to come home because her mother is mysteriously sick and coughing up feathers. Carolyn runs out into the store. Back at Collinwood, we see her run up the stairs and talk to Roger on the landing. He tells her the doctor couldn't figure out what it was, but it wasn't a heart attack or stroke. And Roger warns Carolyn against hysterics when she sees her and lets her know that Liz might not recognize her or know what's going on.
Liz is in bed and is all psychic attacked and confused,
She's
but
crying out,
looking
"Why can't I remember?"
she's looking beautiful though. Like all of these scenes where she's just laid out, I was like, "Aw, she's convalesced and lovely in her." Yeah, anyway,
In a carryover from book club podcast, every time we mention Liz, we need to talk about how old and hot she is.
that's because it's witchcraft. It's real, man.
Anyway, Liz is crying out, "Why can't I remember?" And Carolyn comes in, and true to Roger's warning, she does not recognize her own daughter at first. Vicky exits, and Carolyn is trying to talk calmly to Liz, who does not know what the fuck is going on. She can't remember anything, and she asks why she can't just go to her own room, but Carolyn informs her that she is, in fact, in her
In her
room.
room, yeah.
Carolyn encourages her to rest, but Liz is frantic and she insists that she isn't sick, but that something terrible is happening to her. Carolyn tries to comfort her, and Liz eventually starts to comply and lay back and rest.
But then Carolyn starts to cry, and this part is wild, but Liz starts asking, "Why are you crying?" And then she's all, like, weird, hypnotic, like, "Why is my baby crying? My baby is crying."
And you wonder if she's talking about poor Victoria out in the snow on the orphanage
I
steps.
know, it's wild. And, then she, like, gets all, like, nostalgic and mothery and is like, uh, "Do you remember what I used to tell you about tears? Tears are only good for watering cabbages." And Carolyn's like, "Okay, mom," and, like, is clearly freaked out, trying to settle her down, but then she starts asking to be saved and is freaking out, and
Yeah, she's devouring the scenery and bird magic mania and begging for someone to help her, someone to save her.
yeah, it's wild.
And eventually she goes to sleep. So Carolyn heads downstairs to meet Vicky in the drawing room. Carolyn explains Liz's panic about some nebulous, terrible thing happening, and Carolyn wonders if maybe they shouldn't take her to the hospital. Vicky says that the doctor didn't seem to think so and plans to return the following day to do more testing. But Vicky and Carolyn are both distraught about their mother and generally on edge. With any male authority figure being absent, Vicky tries to send Carolyn to bed, and she resists at first, like, "Bitch,
"You're not my
only
daddy
the
uncle.
dudes can tell me when to go to bed," but does head up to bed.
You're not my daddy uncle."
Vicky asks Carolyn if there's anything that she wants, and this launches Carolyn into a fit of melancholy where she declares that even with her mother magically sick upstairs, the only thing she wants in all the world is Burke. Clock close up in the foyer, a match cuts to a close up of the clock in Liz's room. She's talking herself through trying to remember what happened, and she recalls going to see Laura in the cottage. So she hollers out for Vicky and Roger to tell them that she's remembered. She gets out of bed and starts towards the door to look for them to tell them so, but a shadowy figure in a cloak is silhouetted by the lightning striking outside, and Liz calls out, asking, "Who's there? Who's there?"
It
repeatedly.
Yeah, Liz is hollering at it and asking if it's Vicky or Roger or Carolyn, and it's clearly not any of those people. And she calls out, "Who's there? Who is it? Answer me." And then the figure just creeps
Well,
closer.
then she screams, and the figure vanishes.
She fabulously collapses against her four-poster bed wearing this gold flowy looking robe and looking wild-eyed and beautiful and haunted. And then the family come in.
Liz is clinging to the bedpost and creepily intones, "The bird high against the sky, fire, the waves against the rock, the stones, the bird, fire, fire, fire." Carolyn, Roger, and Vicky look puzzled to a suspenseful musical sting. End
It
credits.
was pretty great.
Episode 157, Victoria Winters reminds us that it stormed last night, but this morning, everyone is still creeped out.
Victoria is having psychic dreams of her own now, and she's talking in her sleep in the armchair saying, "Fire, bird, stone," because Josette is trying to spell it out for these clowns, and nobody will listen, to ghosts except you, dear listeners. You listen to ghosts. So thanks.
I don't know, I still think some of this is on Josette for inefficient haunting.
Sure.
She is awfully vague.
Maybe that's the rule. They're like, you can't just like straight up be like, "Hey, bitch." Anyway, they put some Vaseline on the screen, and suddenly Vicky knows that Josette is there, and she's psychic mediuming with her witchy ancestor ghost, and gets the message and says, "Yes, to the graveyard, I'll go," and referring to the graveyard for the bird people. And then she says, "Oh, but I'm very afraid." Opening credits.
Yeah, if that wasn't clear, Josette is telling her the stone in question is the L. Murdoch Stockbridge headstone in the crypt at the graveyard they've been to.
Yeah.
Opening credits. Vicky comes down the stairs into the foyer carrying her coat to accompanying sneaking around music. And she hears a noise, so she looks out the window and hears a car approaching. Then a knock at the door produces Frank, who is, surprise, being a dick and annoyed at Vicky for calling him to come get her at 5 o'clock in the morning without telling him what's going on. She asks him to be quiet because she doesn't want to wake anyone else, but too late for that because Roger is coming down the stairs asking, "What's going on down there?" Vicky asks him how Liz is doing, and he says that she's still sleeping and Carolyn is sitting with her. So Roger asks where Frank and Vicky are going, and Vicky kind of Mrs. Johnson caught in a lie style just sort of wings it and is like, I couldn't sleep, so I called Frank to take me for a drive to no particular
To
destinations."
relax.
Frank wants to know what the fuck is going on, and Roger and Vicky take turns explaining. Roger warns Frank to keep quiet all about this weird business and Liz being magically incapacitated. And they go on to explain about Liz's weird exclamations in the night about the fire and the birds and the stones and the waves and all of that. Roger seems genuinely worried, which is kind of touching
Yeah,
since he's so glib about everything all the
he
time.
gets worked up and is emotional and tearing up and goes to take it like a man in the drawing room, and he changes tune and tells Vicky, "Why don't you go ahead and go on that drive, then come back and get some rest because 'cause I'll need your help with everything."
Uh, Once Frank and Vicky are out of earshot of Roger, she explains that they need to go to that spooky crypt again. We cut to Frank banging insistently on the knocker of the caretaker's door at the graveyard, but he's knocking a long time and nothing is happening.
And Vicky's doubting her psychic abilities for a minute and is saying maybe she just dreamed it. But oddly, Frank is like, "No, I mean, Josette told you, right?" Or something. Like, Frank has been like just so contrary with anything any woman says to him that he has hopped the line several times because he's dismissed her and been like, "Oh, Vicky, you're crazy. You hear ghosts, what?" But then is supportive and like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I believe we addressed that last week, and it is also coming up again. Uh, So Vicky takes a turn knocking and yells for the caretaker, but he wasn't inside this time. He sneaks up on them from behind, which is fun, and
Yeah.
tells them that some of the gravestones were knocked over during the storm, and he was out surveying the damage. And Vicky asks if they can come inside, and he agrees, but then, entering last, he looks around behind him suspiciously before joining them inside, and he cryptically tells them that it wasn't actually the storm that knocks the headstones over, it was the ghosts because they were upset about something, and Vicky is trying to ask about L. Murdoch Stockbridge again,
At
and
all.
if he happens to know any other Murdochs. And he says, L. Murdoch Stockbridge
Died
died by
by
fire
fire.
like 55
Yeah.
times. While they are interjecting, trying to ask him about any other Laura Murdochs. And he does eventually recall that there is another Laura Murdoch something, but he can't recall the other last name. And right on cue, Vicky smells jasmine again, and Josette pops by and pulls a book from the shelf so that it falls to the floor to a theremin sting. Frank picks up the book and reads from the page it was open to, which says Laura Murdoch Radcliffe. And the caretaker's like, yeah, that's who I meant. And he rambles on about where the lady's records might be. Vicky points out that Laura Murdoch Radcliffe was born and died exactly 100 years before Laura Murdoch Stockbridge, which was 100 years before now. Frank asks if Vicky thinks there could be a connection between all these dead Lauras, and Vicky agrees. He repeats the ghostly guidance that Vicky has received about the headstones, and Frank asks, gee, Vicky, do you think current living Laura Murdoch Collins that's staying at your house right now had something to do with what happened to Liz last night? And
She's like,
Vicky says, well, I guess
maybe.
that's possible. Remember that for about 10 minutes from now.
Yeah.
The caretaker has found the records about Laura Radcliffe and is really puzzled because this genealogy that he's found doesn't say who her parents are, and that's very unusual. And whoever her husband was wouldn't have married her if she didn't have notable parents. Also, incidentally, Laura Murdoch Radcliffe died by fire.
Fire.
Back at Collinwood, Roger is pissed that Mrs. Johnson has let someone in. And this time it was my turn to be like, who is this dude? But I realized after a few seconds that it was Lieutenant Riley. And he's only come by to say, you know how I strong armed you into letting me have a doctor test your wife to make sure she was who she said she is? And Roger's like, yeah, that was like 2 days ago. I do remember. And Lieutenant Riley's like, well, turns out your wife is in fact your wife. And Roger's pretty annoyed and like, that's great. And I knew that already. And why are you coming to my house to tell me that? Then Vicky and Frank return in the middle of this exchange. So Roger catches them up and then throws a fit and tries to excuse himself and let Frank deal with whatever this bullshit is. Riley tries to engage him further, but he storms off.
Frank asks if there was more that the cop wanted to say, and
Lieutenant Riley tells Frank and Vicky that the dead body in Phoenix is 100% definitely medically identified as Laura Collins. But since Collinsport Laura is alive, then she wins. And so she gets to be Laura, and they're going to bury Phoenix Laura as an unidentified body. Riley says he's tempted to put in the report that it seems that there are two Laura Collinses, but that would be crazy, so he won't. Vicky is still kind of puzzled about the whole death by fire every 100 years thing as it relates to currently living Laura in the cottage. And frankly, so am I, because If she's just burnt up in the fire like she does every 100 years, then what is she doing here?
My
Anyway,
God.
end credits. Episode 158. Victoria Winters reminds us that Liz has the bird magic fever. Everyone is worried. We join Liz, Roger, and the doctor in her room. The doctor, whose name I don't think we catch, is trying to get Liz to shut up so that he can take her vitals and things, and he has no answers for her. Roger asks quietly, like off in the corner of the room, what the doctor thinks is wrong with his sister. And the doctor says, I don't know, this is too weird. I haven't ever seen anything like this, but maybe we should discuss it further out of the room. So they step outside before the opening credits. The doctor explains to Roger that while it appears just on observing her that Liz seems to be very ill, she isn't. She's perfectly healthy and there's nothing medically wrong with her. So he suggests that the best course of action would be to move her to a hospital in Boston for further testing. Roger agrees, and the doctor starts to tell him, Great, well, I'll make the arrangements for that. But Roger says there's just one obstacle. You're going to need to get Liz's permission, which will be difficult to do because she is a crazy shut in that has refused to leave the house for the last 18 years. Later, Vicky and Carolyn are puzzling over what on earth might be wrong. Roger comes in and Carolyn asks what the doctor had to say. So Roger explains about the hospital in Boston, and Carolyn immediately tries to shut that down, saying Liz won't agree. But Roger says, Yeah, I know, and that's what I said to the doctor, but that was his suggestion. And Roger suggests to Vicky and Carolyn that maybe the three of them can gang up on Liz and convince her to go to the hospital. Carolyn is uncharacteristically suspicious of Roger, remarking that this would be awfully convenient for him getting Liz out of the way so that he can easily pawn David off on Laura.
Roger goes up to Liz and tells her that the doctor wants her to go to Boston. And she's like, "Oh, hell no."
Her
And
eyes get real big.
she's like, "Fuck that shit. I'm staying right here." And she wants Carolyn and wants nothing more to do with that conversation. And then Carolyn comes in and she tells her, "You're my daughter and they can't commit me without your permission. You won't let them take me." And she says only to help her, and she begs her not to let them take her, and Carolyn asks her to please do it for her to find out what's made her so ill. Liz is upset and
Has her feelings hurt that
yeah,
they seem to have decided her fate without discussing it with her.
right, she's sort of resigned and is just like, "Well, I guess you guys have made up your mind then. Well, fuck you both." And she's, pretty bummed. And she does say that Carolyn is going to be in charge and no decisions are to be made about David or anything else.
She phrases it a little more specifically. She says, Carolyn and only Carolyn is in charge while she's away, and that nothing should be done about David or anything else until she returns.
She asks her to do this and she says she will do her best. And Liz is like, "No, you're just a child." And she changes her mind and is like, "Nope, I'm not leaving. Get my lawyer. Get my lawyer." And she's like, "I won't leave." Like she goes into some more bird magic fits.
Later, Liz regains consciousness to Roger standing over her, and she asks, Well, did you get my lawyer like I asked? And he has not. So
He jokes like, "Oh, are you gonna cut us off?" And she's like, no, but I'm gonna prevent you from sending me to the damn hospital." She then again is like, "I want Vicky. Get the fuck out of here, Roger." Like she's dismissive of him, which It does give an interesting dynamic because he does seem, like you said, genuinely concerned. Although there is still the fact that true, he does benefit from sending her to the hospital and getting his shut-in sister out of the house.
Roger fetches Vicky like he's been instructed to do, and he sits down like he's going to participate in the conversation, but Liz asks him to leave the room, and
He's
he
miffed, yeah.
but he does as he's told, and Liz asks Vicky to promise to do exactly as she tells her, and she explains that Laura's going to try and take advantage of her being out of the house and use that as a way to see David. And Liz insists that Vicky makes sure that Laura doesn't see David. And Vicky again is like, you know, I don't have the authority to do that.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do if Roger insists on it? Because those are his parents. I am his tutor. You know, and Liz gives up on her as well and says, yeah, you're just too young. I don't have anybody I can trust or rely on. And she murmurs to herself repeatedly that she can trust no one, so she has to stay in the house and can't leave Collinwood.
A sort of spooky take on that is that she was also, like, psychically, like, saying, like, "Oh, they're not strong enough, my baby witches with my witch blood, they can't help me out of this magical kerfuffle."
While Liz is muttering to herself, Laura suddenly materializes sitting at the foot of Liz's bed and she menacingly says,
Hello,
"Hello,
Liz.
Liz." And
It's
Liz is
really good.
like, "The fuck are you doing here?" And Laura just says, "Oh, I've come to pay you a little visit." Liz is like, "Oh, well, I'm not well, you see." And Laura slyly is like, "I know."
Yeah.
And she warns Liz that she can't stand in her way of getting David. Liz tries to fight and argue, but Laura slowly hypnotizes her out of remembering what the fuck is going on at all, and she tells Liz that time is stopping for her, coming to a halt. No future, no past, only the nothingness of being in limbo. Theremin stings. Downstairs, Carolyn and Roger argue over sending Liz to the hospital. Carolyn doesn't want to go against her mother's wishes, and she clearly does think that, yes, Liz should probably go to the hospital, but she's still not going to defy her to make that happen. During this exchange, Laura appears in the doorway, and upon noticing her, Roger catches her up on the whole Liz situation. Carolyn is accusatory and storms out, and another like, "Yes, I'm sure you're real sorry about this, Laura.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so very convenient for you." After Carolyn storms out, Laura is faking concern and is like, "Oh no, what happened?"
He is telling her that Liz is adamant that she can't have David, and Laura is team hospital. She's like, "Oh, yes, that is absolutely what she needs." Bless her heart, you know? And Roger's like, "Well, you need to play nice with Carolyn then because she's in charge." Roger says as long as Liz can speak, she can tell her daughter or her lawyer to keep David from her. Laura, like some kind of Bond villain, is like, "Well, that might not be an issue." Cut to the blood-curdling scream of Carolyn, who's found her mother upstairs, and Vicky rushes in, and she's like, "What is it?" And Carolyn's like, "Mother, mother," which takes us all full circle, folks.
And she's sobbing and crying out to her mother, and this was the first time for me that Nancy Barrett wasn't quite convincing.
Yeah.
She was overdoing it a little bit. Downstairs, alone in the drawing room, Laura smiles triumphantly to herself before the end credits.
Yeah, she's pleased with her witch battle victory. Like episode 159, Victoria Winters tells us Liz is catatonic in a witch trance.
Vicky paces the drawing room, making worried faces. Then she answers a knock at the door, and it's Frank. She explains to him that Liz's condition has worsened, and now she's just lying there still, staring, not speaking, not moving, and Frank wonders what the matter could be.
Vicky says yesterday she was still talking and trying to run the house, and she doesn't know what has happened. Frank asks if she's been under stress, and she says, well, yes, the stress around David and Laura.
Vicky proclaims that she thinks this mysterious illness has something to do with Laura Collins' opening credits. And Frank is like, but how could that possibly be the case? Even though 2 episodes ago, Frank wondered the exact same thing
Like I
and was
said.
in fact the one to suggest that idea to Vicky in the first place.
Yeah,
But now it's unbelievable now that she's on
but now that
board.
a woman has said it, fuck Frank. 100%. Ugh.
Vicky explains that Liz has had wanted to see Frank, but she's got locked in syndrome now, so it's useless. And Frank wants to know what she had been talking about at the time. Vicky says that she was against leaving the house to go to the hospital and had put Carolyn in charge of everything. She also tells Frank that Liz ordered Vicky to keep David away from his mother. And Frank explains to Vicky, because he assumes she is an idiot, that she doesn't have any legal authority to do that. And Victoria is clearly not pleased with how unhelpful Frank is being about all of this. And
Well, she's clearly exhausted and upset and maybe done dealing with his contrary bullshit for once.
she yearns aloud for someone who could explain all of this. And then all of a sudden, as though he hadn't had ample opportunity to consider this previously, Frank suddenly recalls, oh, yeah, I know a professor of parapsychology at Dartmouth who deals in the unexplained. Maybe we should call him.
Maybe, yeah, we'll see if he wants to come ghost hunt or bird lady hunt.
And he is referring to Dr. Peter Guthrie and says he will call him and ask him to come by. Elsewhere, David runs panting into Laura's cottage. They had been racing, and she enters shortly after. They are having a nice time, and she invites him to sit by the fire and laments this cold climate, longing for a warmer environment. She invites David to tend the fire, and he gets very excited because that's an interest of his, but Roger never lets him do it. And Laura suggests maybe he should add another log, and he excitedly agrees, like, really? Oh gosh. And he does so. And they're both going on and on all about how great the fire is, and he's thanking her profusely for letting him play with fire. And she says that he can do that as often as he likes at her house.
And that he can come tomorrow at first thing in the morning and she'll make him pancakes. And for once in this poor spooky child's life, he has a parent that seems to care about him and want to teach him things, but probably only because of bird magic, which is sad. But she gets her bird magic face on and the music starts, the bird lady music.
And she starts talking real slow.
And she says she's glad they're good friends, and he says that he's never hated her, and he says that he likes her.
She resumes normal speech and asks him if he'd like to have a sleepover soon, and he's real excited about that, to come over and play with fire all night long, and
Yeah, he's into it.
she tells David that they must never let anyone come between them, and David seems kind of dismissive, like, "Well, who would wanna do that?" And Laura says, "Oh, there was someone, but that will never happen."
Dun, dun.
Vicky catches David returning home and asks where he's been. He explains, and she asks him to come on down to the drawing room for a talk with her, but she's very stern about it. And she wants to know why he didn't tell her that he was going out. He's not sure why she cares. He says, "Oh, with my mom, and I'll probably be with my mom a lot, and it's fine." She explains about Liz being very sick and having to go to the hospital.
He hopes that she gets better soon and that she isn't gone for long. And Vicky says in the meantime, Liz wanted him to do more schoolwork. That they're going to start early in the morning and have a good school day right after breakfast. And he says that he promised mother breakfast. And Vicky says, like, oh, well, we can
That's
just,
fine, just have her
yeah,
come up here for breakfast, but he's whiny about it,
yeah.
and he's throwing a fit, but Vicky is continuing to be stern with
He
him.
doesn't understand why she's being so strict. And,
He
um,
explains that Laura let him tend the fire and invited him to come do more of it in the morning, so he has responsibilities to his mother.
And Vicky is concerned by this, and she asks again, and
He yells that, "You're just trying to keep me away from my mother," to which Laura interrupts and shouts, "David, Miss Winters wouldn't do that," and then eyes Vicky and is like, "Would you, Vicky?" It was fun.
yeah, Laura's been creeping up in the house ever since she bumped Liz out of commission. She's feeling pretty ballsy, just materializing up in the house like, "Oh, hello."
Laura tries to get David to apologize to Vicky. Vicky's explaining what they were arguing about and that she's not trying to keep them apart. She just needs him to do school.
'Cause he's behind on his schoolwork, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't know he was behind." "Well, you guys can go ahead and do that, and we can eat tomorrow, and then the next day, we'll have our private breakfast." And Vicky's like, "Well, it's not gonna happen in just one day, he's real behind." And they're both very thinly veiled, like, communicating through this, and
Laura is still trying to put on a happy face for David and is like, "Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
when do you think he will be caught up?" And Vicky is being kind of evasive and vague about, like, "Well, it's really hard to say. He's
Yeah.
real behind." Laura sends David up to bed so that they can properly fight.
Yeah, and she bitchily menaces her about how she was helpful and backed her up just now. She's like, "Didn't I just back you up just now? Do you remember how I did that? Well, you aren't backing me up like you did in the beginning. Why aren't you backing me up, Vicky?" And Vicky just sort of gray rocks at her about it. And when Laura asks if Liz has anything to do with her wanting to suddenly try to keep David away with schoolwork.
Vicky says that whatever she does is for David and that Laura couldn't ask for any more than that. And Laura says, "Oh, yes, I can." And she vaguely threatens Vicky before a musical sting into the end credits. Episode 160. Victoria Winters reminds us that Liz is in a bird magic coma. Carolyn sits at her mother's bedside watching her closely when Vicky enters and asks how she is. Carolyn reports that they're hasn't been any change, no blinking, no nothing.
Vicky offers to sit a while and wants her to go rest and have some lunch, but Carolyn doesn't want to go because she gets the feeling that her mother is trying to tell her something. She then asks her mother if she's trying to say something and repeats it. Liz just keeps staring unblinkingly. Opening credits.
Carolyn begs Liz to speak, but Vicky
Yeah.
tells her that she can't hear.
Vicky tells her not to do this to herself, and Carolyn asks why the doctor doesn't do anything, and Vicky says that's why she needs to go to Boston. Carolyn wants the test brought here, like, bring Boston to her, like, I want to honor my mother's wishes. Vicky tells Carolyn about the doctor of spookyology at Dartmouth coming on Frank's request.
But she doesn't. She lies and pretends not to know what kind of doctor he is.
Well, yeah, I was getting to that, but go ahead.
Oh, okay.
No, it's fine, you said it.
Vicky excuses herself, telling Carolyn she'll be downstairs if she needs anything. Roger enters and asks after Liz, and Carolyn also tells him that there hasn't been any change. Roger tries to look on the bright side and is like, well, at least it isn't any worse. He also urges Carolyn to send Liz to the hospital, but she again refuses. And they're going back and forth about it, and Roger's trying to strong arm her into agreeing, but she won't budge.
Yeah, he changed from his tune from kind and empathetic kittening to shaming her for being power hungry. And he says that he will give permission. And she says that he doesn't really have a say. And he says he's going to talk to Garner to find out exactly how much power little Miss Britches has.
And she's like, well, you do that, and you'll find
Yeah,
out that it's all of
motherfucker.
it.
Yeah, she bitterly says that, then he again comments that she is
More and more
more and more
like
like
him
him every
every
day,
day.
which is something he said earlier in the episode, but I had dropped my phone
He
in my
didn't
notes.
say it to her, though. He
Yeah,
said it
to
to
Laura.
Laura after Carolyn had stormed out.
Yeah. But yeah, and she bitterly responds to that by saying, "Well, surely that's a compliment." And then Roger's like, "Surely." And, it was pretty good.
They have their little fight over who gets to be in charge, but Carolyn's tired of it and just says, well, there's a Dr. Guthrie coming later that Frank arranged for, and we'll see what he says and we'll talk after that. So after Roger has gone, Carolyn talks to Liz and says that whatever her problem is, Carolyn is beginning to think it isn't medical.
Downstairs, Vicky answers the door for the Ghostbuster and invites him in to the drawing room. He tells her a little bit about ghost business. He tells her that for him, it's all about the scientific pursuit of the paranormal. She asks if he's ever seen a ghost, and he says that he has never had the pleasure. She asks how she should introduce him to the family, and he says, like, "Well, I go with psychologists specializing in, psychosomatic behaviors, and that's honestly close to the truth," he says, and
Well, no, it is the truth. He
yeah,
is actually a regular
yeah,
psychologist as well.
yeah,
So he also sets realistic expectations
yeah, I
for
liked
Vicky and
yeah,
says, I don't find anything more often than I do. And nobody can explain the unexplained. So don't get your hopes up, kid.
yeah.
I am sweet on Dr. Guthrie.
He's pretty great so far, I like him. Vicky escorts him he wants to go meet Liz now, so Vicky escorts him into the hall, and Roger comes down, and they're introduced, and he says he hopes he can discover the cause, as the doctor before had never seen anything like it. He requests that the spooky doctor send her to the hospital if he doesn't find anything. He says that if what he thinks is true, she won't be staying in this house another minute, which I thought was odd. But
Yeah. In Liz's room, Vicky knocks and brings Dr. Guthrie in and introduces him to Carolyn. Carolyn is initially pissed when he mentions psychosomatic conditions, and she's kind of like, "Oh, so you're saying she's faking it,
yeah,
making it up?" And he explains that, well, he says that because he consulted with Liz's regular doctor who couldn't find anything medically wrong with her. So if there's nothing wrong with her body, then stands to reason maybe there's something going on with her mind. And they get Dr. Guthrie up to speed on Liz's condition as it has presented so far while he's examining her. And he notices that her hands are rigid and asks how long that's been the case. Carolyn says she was like that when she found her. And he asks what Liz had been talking about when last she was speaking. So they explain to Dr. Guthrie about Liz wanting her lawyer and telling Vicky to make sure David is kept away from Laura. Vicky also explains about Liz's mysterious chunk of missing time. He suggests that perhaps Liz may have had a traumatic experience that gave her a bout of amnesia. And then he asks Vicky to close the curtains. As soon as she does, the Laura is up to something music starts, and Dr. Guthrie calls out to Liz, asking if she can hear him. He claps real loud right in her face and taps on her elbow, checking her reflexes, and shines a bright flashlight into each of her eyes. And having done all of this, Dr. Guthrie proclaims that Liz is in a trance, a state of suspended animation,
Carolyn's like a trance.
a condition induced by hypnosis.
He says whatever influence caused this hypnosis could be in the house, so she needs to be taken out of the house. Carolyn asks what the influence could be. He says that he doesn't yet know. He also tells her that the condition could be permanent and they must do everything possible to get her any kind of care that they can and must try everything. Carolyn relents and gives permission to send her to Boston.
Only after Dr. Guthrie gets a little bit melodramatic about it and
Yeah,
says that it might be a matter of life and death to get her out of the house.
yeah.
And so at that point, Carolyn asks Vicky what she should do, and Vicky says hospital. So Carolyn finally agrees, and Vicky excuses herself to call the doctor to make the arrangements. Dr. Guthrie asks Vicky not to tell anyone anything unnecessary, and he explains to Carolyn that he'll want to stay on in the house and interview everyone and do some more research. Carolyn returns to Liz's bedside and asks if the doctor thinks that she can see or hear them. And he replies that she can't hear us and her eyes see only the nameless terror that made her this way. End credits.
It is pretty good. I'm excited.
It was an action-packed week. Follow us on Instagram at Ghosts Want You Dead. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/Ghosts Want You Dead for bonus episodes and other fun stuff. Again, last call for welcome gifts. Join before May 1st at any level where you are contributing monetarily. Sorry, free folks, not for you. We're turning off the microphones now. But
We're hanging up now.
one last thing. Next month, $5 bonus episode. Maybe we can do a Q&A. So if you have any questions for us,
Yep. We'd
leave
love to answer
comments.
them.
I'll also add this on into that.
Yeah,
Anyway, bye now.
we're hanging up now.